industries, financially supporting them will actually enable the local investors to actually move to these rural areas and actually promote more development. We also see giving better services to these poor in rural areas is also going to attract these people in urban areas that would want to move but did not have an alternative initially. But now they see there is an alternative, which are the rural areas, which are actually not as rural as they see because of this reverse urbanization that has actually made them eligible for settlement. We also talked about decentralization, whereby we are moving these different offices that are in urban areas that cannot be accessed by people in rural areas. All this is actually going to attract people that would want to move from urban areas to actually go to rural areas without any complaints. We also give you examples of one village movement that has actually worked. One in South Korea, the New Village Movement, whereby actually the government of South Korea told encourage university graduates to actually move to rural areas and cause development in them. As we see, South Korea is actually one of the most developed countries in the world. Why? Because of these new village movements. These university graduates that actually always want to settle in urban areas because of the better good in urban areas. Through reverse urbanization, this better good can actually also be brought to rural areas. What will it cause? It will actually cause development in rural areas, hence causing balancing in both regions, the urban areas and the rural areas. We are not actually transferring problems. I'm sure the negative side will come and talk about how we are transferring all problems from urban areas to rural areas. We are not just transferring the problems from urban areas to rural areas, but we are rather maintaining and balancing economic development in both areas. So we do not expect you to actually come and say that we are just carrying all problems from urban areas to rural areas. And then we also come and tell you that the government actually has a role to play in this reverse urbanization. So the government itself is one that is going to cause the development in these rural areas, as it also maintains the development in the urban areas, which I already emphasized that is going to cause balance in both the regions. The youth speaker also came and talked about how the urban areas, how you're going to improve different urban areas, but not actually shed more light on actually how you're going to improve these urban areas. Because we believe by actually our policy and our given model and our given policies that are actually going to we're going to adopt to promote reverse urbanization, we believe that we are actually going to solve the root problems of actually what leads to urbanization. The root problems, as my first speaker told you, from the problems that are faced by people in rural areas, we are going to address these problems in both sides. So we actually see there is balanced and sustainable development in both sides, other than your case where you're actually looking at only improving urban areas. So what happens to the rural areas if you're only improving urban areas? This is going to lead to more people actually moving from these rural areas to these urban areas, which is actually going to exacerbate the problems that are in urban areas. So if you only look at improving the urban areas and you leave the rural areas to be, this is going to exacerbate the problems in the urban areas, because the people in rural areas are going to keep moving to urban areas as they see you actually continuing to use your funds, as the government to actually improve urban areas. That's why we believe these funds the government actually uses to improve urban areas, it can use these same funds to actually improve rural areas as it maintains urban areas. And we believe that this will actually bring a balance in both the areas and actually promote sustainable development with better service. Sorry for that. I'll be starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So panel, what we're noticing as side opposition is that both teams are trying to thrive for economic growth, right? We both have different ways that we do that, but at the end of the day, we all have one common goal. So now let's see which team best suits that goal, okay? First of all, we have side proposition coming here saying that they're going to adopt these policies, and they think that these policies are guaranteed to work. They think just because the ones in urban areas have failed, they think that people moving to rural areas automatically creates jobs because now there's people there. They think that unemployment is solved if people move to rural areas. First of all, unemployment exists for a lot of reasons, but the main reason isn't just because people live in urban areas. The main reason is that people don't have the access to things like proper education, right? But we say, rather than us starting all over in a rural area, we improve what we already have, right? What we're noticing from side proposition is that they're neglecting urban areas. They are saying, no, we should forget about these urban areas and we should build the rural areas. We should start all over again. Well, we're telling you that that isn't practical, because at the end of the day, there's still people that are going to live in those urban areas. If we continuously focus on the rural areas, it creates a strain on the government in the sense that they've been providing all these services and they've been struggling. They've been struggling to provide services for urban areas, but side proposition still lives in a world where the government that struggles to
provide service delivery will automatically, magically just be able to do that just because, well, now people are living in rural areas. We don't necessarily understand how that exists. We don't necessarily understand how that comes into play, to the point where now that there's people living in rural areas, the government suddenly has money to provide all that service delivery, or the government suddenly has resources to provide all that service delivery. Therefore, their point on how they magically aim to improve these rural area service delivery already falls, because we've shown you that even because in their world they're not considering every possible outcome that could come into play, or they're not considering the fact that the government already can't provide for urban areas. So how do you expect them to split those little services that they can barely provide to the rural areas again? We don't necessarily understand what you're saying there. Next of all, we speak about, so with that we were able to kind of show you how the government's strain and how the government will be strained by this. But anyways, let's move to the policies, right? Side proposition lives in their heads. They think that these policies are going to be efficient because just because they are being done in rural areas. Well, we at side opposition tell you, well, no. In general, policies always have loopholes. Policies always have people that are trying to combat them, right? We see this not only in the urban areas, but also with South Africa and the BEE commissions, right? Where policies were put into place to combat the fact that all these corporate jobs don't have enough people of color in them, right? And so government said that if you introduce people of color into your corporate jobs, we'll give you this amount of money. But then you had things like nepotism, and then you had things like people trying to combat the system, right? What I'm trying to show you by telling you this is the fact that people are always trying to find loopholes in policies, right? It's not because they are in urban areas that they didn't work, but it's because people are constantly trying to find loopholes in policies, and therefore we don't have a guarantee that their policies are going to work. What else can I use to elaborate on this? Well, I can tell you that these tax incentives and these tax incentives that they claim will work, right? Could still exist, could not exist, because at the end of the day, people that that are unemployed and that lack education would be moving to these rural areas, and they still wouldn't be able to get jobs because they don't have the correct qualifications to do so. Which also shows you how we as side opposition combat that problem. We are saying, rather than us focusing on the rural areas and the urban areas, which creates a strain on the government, it would be better for us to focus on what we already have, right? The government has already been trying to provide RDPs. The government has already been trying to improve education. But rather than leaving that halfway and going to the rural areas and putting all our education, our attention on the rural areas, it would be better for us to improve what we have right here. It would be better for us to work on the government providing RDP houses. It would be better for us to work on the government being able to improve education in South Africa. With that being said, I've already shown you how these policies of side proposition aren't going to work, because at the end of the day, the problem with the policies isn't where they've been placed. The problem is the people that are going to be affected by these policies, because there will always be loopholes that society is able to find. With that being said, I'd like to share a point of information from side proposition.
Thank you. In your world, you keep saying that the government can act like at the moment, the government cannot actually provide for those in urban areas. So actually, how do you expect it to improve the urban areas if in your world, actually, it cannot provide for those in urban areas at the moment?
Well, how do you expect it to improve the rural areas if it can't provide for the people it already has? If it can't solve the problems it already has, why are you trying to give it more problems? That makes no sense. That is impractical, and that just brings more problems for our near future. Now, moving forward, right? Side proposition is failing to understand that these. So, with that being said, my rebuttals that I've given have already dealt with majority of side proposition's case, because I've told you that the policies that they've provided aren't reliable, and the fact that all their solutions that are bringing just add strain to the government. Because at the end of the day, we have to realize that there are a lot of developing countries that would not be able to cope with reverse urbanization if they can't even cope with urbanization. Yeah, now here's why the solutions that side opposition brought are way better, right? Now, first of all, we have to realize that with these solutions, the government is able to, this was also spoken by, okay, sorry. I would now like to continue to my team summary. with that being said, right, my first speaker spoke about how the urban areas are struggling. Side proposition continues to neglect the urban areas, neglect the fact that they also need development, and neglect the fact that development would exist in a better way in the urban areas, right? They've also said that moving people to rural areas will create jobs, but they haven't even elaborated on how that creates jobs. Just because me, I'm a teenager, or me, just because me, I'm above the age of 18 and I move to the rural area doesn't mean I automatically have a job, right? Now, moving forward, my first speaker spoke about how urban areas are struggling and they should get the attention, because at the end of the day, dividing the government's attention would just create more strain on their shoulders, right? The government would have more to deal with, and they would have be very under pressure, and therefore we don't want to promote policies that adopt policies that promote reverse urbanization, because those policies would just create extra strain on the government that we have. Right? Now, moving forward to my second speaker's summary, right? So my second speaker spoke about how it would be straining in rural areas, right? So as said before, the rural areas are already suffering. That's a common ground that both teams were able to get to, right? We were both able to establish the fact that both rural areas and urban areas are suffering, right? But what side proposition hasn't noticed is the fact that if we continuously promote reverse urbanization, the government won't be able to supply different services for the rural areas, because they are already struggling with what they have right now. If they can't provide for the urban area, how do you expect them to magically be able to provide for everyone else? So with that being said, panel, side-by-side opposition, because we have shown you how realistic side of proposition's plan is, how reliable their policies are, and obviously the best solution for their